Welcome to another episode of the Vital MX post-race show, and well, the plot thickens. 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross is delivering. We're only 2 rounds in, and we have said this so many times before at this early portion of the season, but if it continues like this, we are in for a doozy, and we will be here every single week to discuss the 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross series. So if it continues in this way, you are going to want to tune into this podcast, now available on YouTube, every single Monday morning. We are now on YouTube as well as audio platforms, of course, and that is made possible by our loyal supporters Decal Works, Yamaha, Yoshimura, and Fox Racing. We've added Yamaha this week, great timing. Eli Tomac, of course, rocketed to a win aboard his YZ450F, and we hope to do similar winning with our podcast quality. Yamaha will certainly help us get to that point. And of course, thank you to Decal Works, loyal supporter, been with us through thick and thin, and they've also supported Chase Sexton through thick and thin in 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross, from the top of the podium to now watching his Decal Works graphics storm through the field from dead last to 6th place. Decal Works is clearly fit for every single environment. So that is why you should head to decalmx.com, customize your own graphics. Maybe you want to make yourself look similar to Chase Sexton, why wouldn't you? Or maybe you want to go for your own vibe. Do that. Decal Works will literally do whatever you want. Trust me on that. Head over there, tell them I said that, and they'll go, yeah, we can do that. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips. Hello. Once again, joined by Michael Lindsay. Hello, how are you?
Hello. I will say 2 things to start. One, I'm very impressed that when you announced Yamaha, you didn't say YZ 450. You actually said YZ.
I've never would have said YZ. Like, that's never been.
I thought that was a British thing. Every time I heard 6, it was like Z06 or something, watching Jeremy Clarkson as a kid.
No, but maybe that's because I've always, maybe it's a motocross thing. Like, you always watch Supercross, so you hear it that way. But I've never said Z like that. Actually, I just did. I say Z like that when I'm referring to the letter singular, is where we're at.
Second one, to kind of sort of kick this off, this is our 3rd year going to Snapdragon. I think me and you have both been a little meh on this venue the last 2 years, but it's funny thinking back to Qualcomm wasn't exactly the greatest stadium either, but something about good races changes your feelings on a venue. I haven't been exactly the biggest fan of this venue, but man, some good racing really changes how you feel about it. I'm a little bit happier with this place after last night.
Snapdragon has some weird juju, and not the juju that won the 250 main event. For whatever reason, I feel like we are getting crazy races at this venue every single year. Again, only a couple of years, but there's definitely a pattern forming, and we will get into maybe the greatest race of all San Diego history on this episode of the Vital MX post-race show. So where do we begin? We can do Jett, HRC, all of that. We can do Tomac, he won, terrific, brilliant. We can do Chase, arguably a ride as good as his Anaheim 1, just packaged differently. Where do you go first? This is kind of a indication of where our heads are at championship-wise, because who is the guy you're drawn towards?
I mean, I'm drawn to the Eli conversation. I'm very drawn to it. I'm drawn to the racing, the performance. I just rewatched because, of course, I was on the floor shooting. So, I mean, I just quick skim the races real quick. And, man, the opening laps were fun to watch. I mean, Eli, that kind of had some Kenny-esque-ness to him. Just so much intensity early in the race. Watching him and Jett come through the pack. His pass on Jett on the outside in the sand earlier in the race, just, the coin term for Eli now, just straight beast mode. Just so much aggression, so much fun to watch. The overall battle between the two of them was great. Just finally getting to see something I feel like, we've been waiting for now for since last year is, okay, Jett versus Eli in a very toe-to-toe style, getting to see the differences. Eli in somewhat more peak Eli form, just really railing the outside, a lot of clutch, a lot of aggression, Jett working the insides, working the technique, working for traction in unusual places. Just overall blast to watch.
Well, of course you were drawn to Tomac because you were probably drawn to the Yamaha more than Tomac himself. Yamaha on the post-race show, if you hadn't noticed that already. I was caught off guard, to be honest, with how emotional, relieved Tomac was after the win. I would argue that he was almost more emotional relieved than he was after St. Louis last year, which really surprised me.
100%. Yep.
And then on the podium, he made comment that this was his first traditional main event win since before the Achilles injury, which at first I kind of just dismissed because I was like, why does that matter? A win's a win. And then as it set in, I was like, you know what? I could see when it's late at night, Eli's sat on the sofa thinking about life. I could see the fact that he only won a Triple Crown last year leading to some doubt and some questions, because it is different. There is chaos. It is more of a consistency game. Of course, in St. Louis, he was just outright the best guy across for multiple races. But the more I thought about it, it did make sense why it was so important for him to get the monkey off of his back, the 20-minute monkey off of his back in 2025, and especially so soon in the season.
Yeah, and I think San Diego checks a lot of boxes. I mean, there could still be, some of the race. So if it was him, Jett, and Chase, that's a really going toe-to-toe. That's maybe a little different, but still a decent start, but still had to make some early moves, really work those opening laps, show some aggression to have, considered the title favorite Jett, basically just stalking him the whole race to have to put it together, the intensity ran. There's just a lot of things about this race that probably check boxes for him that, again, yeah, cool, St. Louis, he won last year. That had to feel good, but this one checks some boxes of like, what I mean? Like this puts him in that, even though we talked about preseason, he is a, somebody who can win the title. It's got to make him feel like, even personally, like, okay, I can race for this. These check some of the boxes. I am ready to go to war for the next 15 weeks after this if I ride like this.
Based on the relief that we saw, it almost makes me wonder, like, okay, in my opinion and many others, Anaheim 1 was amazing for Eli. As I said last week, 10 out of 10. But actually, with the relief we saw, I wonder if he almost felt like, I blew another 20-minute main. Can't do it. Like, again, the opportunity was there for me to win my first 20-minute main in almost 2 years, and again, I just couldn't get it done. I wonder if maybe the frustration after Anaheim 1 was more prevalent than maybe we would have suspected. I'd bet so. I mean, I don't think he would answer that truthfully if you ask him that at A2, but I would bet so based on his actions in San Diego.
Oh, yeah, you leave the first round. You imagine as far as he came through, like there was some relief in terms of points haul and a settle, but you go home, you rewatch the race. He probably watches himself just washing on the first lap, kicking himself like, what could have been, and then doubt, well, if I would have started in the lead, would I held on to it? Like, what's going to happen? So again, I just think San Diego checks a lot of boxes that's got to make him feel really, really good.
I would like to hop into an alternative universe and see what the mood is, how it was handled. If Jett had got him with 2 laps to go, a couple of laps to go, obviously it would have been a very different story, a very different reaction. I would love to see just the parallels of how that leads into Anaheim 2, like what changes, because clearly San Diego was Tomac's defining moment. Like, this was the key that will unlock now a 2025 title run. It genuinely seems that way. I feel like without this, or had we waited until Detroit, Arlington for him to get a main event win, I think that has an effect on 2025 as a whole.
Well, speaking of the title run, I'll hit you. Something we talk about a lot on this show. Changes a little week to week. And I mean, we still have to get to the other people in this conversation, but let's hit you with it early. Title percentages. How do you feel after 2 rounds, Lewis?
How do you pick? I think the greater discussion is whether you want to give Webb or others a significant slice of the pie. Because I think right now, if you base it on what we've seen, you just give Jett, Tomac, Chase 33% each. I think although that's a very lame opinion, I think that's also a very sensible opinion. The debate comes as to whether you want to break off some of that to Webb and who do you take that away from. And to be honest, I don't know where I sit on that at this point.
I'd say I take basically 3.3% away from the 3 we just talked about and give 10 to Coop. Coop wasn't able to get the job done last night, but between the 2 rounds, I think I've seen definitely a lot of positive out of Coop, especially last night. He falls into the category of one of the quite ill this week, from what I could tell and see. So I think still some positives for him there. I still definitely, based on the early run of the race, I'm like, okay, Coop's here. Coming into the season with an injury that he's kind of kept himself a little bit lower prep. maybe a little under the weather. So to see the performance out of him early, like, yeah, he's still, it's going to come. Win's going to come from him, very soon at the rate we're going.
How much stock do you put into this? Tomac has won once for 11 consecutive seasons, a new record, because that's going around a lot. But I put less stock in it than most purely because I'm like, well, yeah, it's Tomac. As long as he keeps winning, as long as he keeps racing, he's going to win a race. Similar to if Carmichael had kept racing, he would have also kept winning. Like, no? I feel like, is that maybe a nonchalant reaction?
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. It's not a shocking record like, oh my God, like this is unfathomable, style record. It's like, yeah, it's very expected because he's still here. I think it calls back to staying power, that we're just seeing from this current group. And I keep saying this every year. It rings home true to me because I'm the exact same basically age as Eli, Jason, a lot of these guys I could race 50s with and stuff. And so I see it every year with the age. I'm just like, wow, this whole group is still here. They're still hanging in there, and it's just, yeah, it's a staying power thing. The fact that he's won 11 years in a row, won a race, not shocking to me. I mean, a little shocking that he's still here, along with a slew of these guys. But does he make it 12 next year? Yeah, and again, based on the relief of that win, based on what I talked to him at A1 press conference as well, like this guy's going to be here next year. Come on.
Is there any question, doubt in your mind that this is sustainable across 17 rounds? Is there a part of you that wants to see if we are still firing on all cylinders when we get to round 12? Or are you pretty much certain that Tomac, as long as Tomac's healthy, Tomac is peak every single week?
I think he's turned a corner. I think he's there every single week. I think the conversation we just had, like, Chase, I don't have a lot of doubt in my mind between your Chase, Jett, and Eli in that conversation. I think the three of them are ready to go to war for the next 15 weeks. I will say of the three of them, yes, Eli is the one with the question mark if he can go to war the next 15 weeks, and part of that is age and just how long he's been doing it, and will this form carry? It's a little easier to say for Jett or Chase their form can carry through the season from, just intensity, burnout, training, etc. But again, Eli's somebody that we don't down that. Like, okay, say this early season form was Roczen's, we would instantly be like, can he have the staying power because of the health issues and other stuff? But man, with Eli, you just think like if everything's clicking mentally, we know he's fit, we know he can grind through this. I don't think there's that much doubt.
So you disregard the highs and lows of last year because 2025 is seemingly different, which is fair.
I feel like so. Yeah, just I think racing again. Can the highs and lows come? Yes, but I also think in the same breath, the way he's carrying himself, the performances, we talk about it so much. I feel like the sport is so mental. I feel like these opening rounds, it's almost like my comments last week about base setting on suspension, always having something to fall back on. I also think for some riders, like you can argue the same thing with a mental state and form. If you have this over the first couple rounds, even if you have a bad week or something, I feel like you can kind of fall back on that base feeling that you had early in the year. Would you kind of agree that that's plausible for guys mentally?
Yeah, I guess it simply comes back to it's important that he got the monkey off of his back this early in the season. Because this is now, again, this is the key that unlocks a 2025 title run, quite simply. It may sound like a very obvious statement, but I feel like with a deeper meaning, mentally, even maybe physically a little bit, I do think that rings true. Moving on to Jett. Maybe everyone did overreact after Anaheim won, us included. Lars Lindstrom said in Honda HRC statement after Anaheim won that Anaheim 1 was better than everyone kind of realized. He pointed to Jett having the fastest lap in his heat by almost a second, and the fact that Hunter was fourth when he crashed. 2 valid points. However, it was still evident that they weren't where they needed to be. I did not expect them to take such steps in the space of a week. But Jett was very happy, cheerful, playful on press day, and I think that was maybe a sign that he had a productive week, because I don't imagine that he would have been so forthcoming had the week been more difficult. So maybe the writing was on the wall purely from Jett's demeanor.
Yeah, I would say from your press day conversation with him, even where when a rider is almost open about what's been going wrong, they probably usually feel like they're over the hill a little bit. It's a little easier to talk about the struggles or what they had to work on when they feel like they've gone a little bit past it. But like on the pod last week, we were talking about how quick he'd win, and I said it. I'm like, these guys could figure it out in a week. Like, it wouldn't shock me at all. So I said last week I wouldn't have been shocked if he came out and won this weekend. Yeah, they had some struggles at A1, but it's a smart group. They know each other well. They know what they need to do. Still interesting throughout the day, like just a little bit difference in what you're used to seeing, like Jett off the bike each session, particularly early sessions in the morning, just the crowd around him, the amount of input between him and the guys, pointing at the bike, watching iPad, whether it's data or playbacks, just still a little not as intense as last weekend in terms of the attitude, but still intense in the amount of thought and effort going into some of these, this feedback and these changes, and just, really detailing out where they need to go. So there's still room for those guys to improve, but definitely a very big jump in 1 week. I love Jett's demeanor right now, the way he's carrying himself. I love the fact that he's, being faced with his first real major 450 racing challenge in terms of Supercross, and with these guys early in the season, and he seems to be taking it so well. And I just like how it's going to play out. The kind of conversation we got off the bike, I was there right as he got off. He's like, a little like, damn, I can get him kind of like the like a rider would be, but in the same time, he was super excited about the battle, and immediately went over and congratulated Eli and had a really good feeling about himself.
So some of the changes that were made, starts were clearly much, much, much better. After Paris and AUS-X Open, they went a different way in gearing, which essentially made first gear unusable out of the gate, made the rear wheel slide a little bit too much, hence why his starts were so bad at Anaheim 1. So they reverted back to something more similar to the Paris AUS-X Open gearing for San Diego. Clearly better. That's fairly plug and play. I don't feel like that was ever going to be an issue that stretched for much further than a single week. Suspension, he also was quite happy, confident that they were closer to 100%. Not at 100%, but certainly it sounded like, talking to him on and off the record, that they were closer to the ballpark now. Like, you can at least have a conversation about being happy, settled, whatever you want to call it. There's certainly more work to do, but I believe that they've returned to Florida this week, which tells you something about where they're at mentally, because if it was really a bit of a disaster with a lot more work to do, they would have stayed in California. He was also quite forthcoming about how with the old bike, he could be a little lazier in the turns and still turn as he wanted to, whereas on the new bike, he needs to be a lot more aggressive in the turns, and his muscle memory is still causing him to maybe be a little lazier in the turns than he needs to be on this bike. So that is a personal change that he needs to overcome in the coming weeks. Obviously, you get into bad habits, or not even bad habits, habits of any kind, and he'll get there. That will come. I'd imagine that will come quite quickly, because I think that was abundantly clear to him battling with Eli that was where his weakness was. So I don't think he'll make the same mistake twice. So maybe that will equal an even better Jett at Anaheim too. But quite simply, I think, yeah, no need to panic. Jett is Jett, Eli's Eli, and Chase is Chase. They are all great again, and this is going to be one heck of a battle.
One little note, you said first gear. I think you meant second gear, correct?
I don't even know what I said to you, to be honest.
Oh, I'm talking about power, second gear. No, I think it was obvious. Any of your hard pack, more sweeping corners where he was cutting the insides were definitely better than last weekend. You mentioned with the cornering, it kind of got noticeable towards the end of the main when he was battling Eli. He was trying to cut down more and just still he got a little notchier with his corners towards the end of the race. Didn't look as flowy as he was last year. So yeah, still looks like he's got to work on that a little bit. But definitely, I thought the biggest standout is how much more comfort they look like they had front end wise. Just, we talked about last week, I didn't see as much like coming out of the switchbacks. The front end didn't seem as reactive to everything. He didn't look like he was getting head shake coming out of corners and kind of catching himself off balance as much and everything. But just overall fun. Again, when you see, even though he got beat, to see that much positivity after the race, it's a rider that's like, okay, we've moved a big step in the right direction. So, there's definitely some excitement from him. Normally that position, he might be a little more bummed, but it was a big week for them.
Okay, I don't know what I said, but for the in the interest of clarity, Jett said, "We pinpointed my start issues to gearing. We changed it so that we could use second more. It was way too aggressive on the starts though and made first unusable. It slid up very easily." I don't know what I said, but there we go.
First, okay, you didn't mention first gear. I didn't surprised he even uses first, but yeah, second. It seemed like their power was too aggressive at the last race. That makes sense.
But yeah, I have no more questions. Like, I'm good. Jett, if Jett does, okay. So last week I said I didn't think Jett wins until Tampa because of the issues. It is still possible that Jett doesn't win in Tampa, but if that happens, it will purely be because the field is so competitive that it's going to be hard for anyone to get a win, and it's kind of just going to be a matter of circumstance.
Yeah, when I spoke to Roczen pre-race, that seemed to be something came up with him was just like he was overall and just impressed at the field itself right now between himself and Chase and Jett and Eli and Webb, just kind of the overall pace of the group. Kind of his feeling that nobody seemed to stand out too much above the other. He seemed really impressed at that overall pace right now between everybody.
Let's jump to Chase because he is part of this trio, this fantastic trio, the trio of the moment. First of all, well, two things. One, how weird is it that we are 2 rounds in and Eli, Jett, and Chase have all started in last? Well,
yeah.
Last week, Jett and Eli started last and second to last, but you get my point. Weird that we're only 2 races in and every contender, or every major contender, or whatever you want to call it without disrespecting the others.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that, but
I know what you mean.
Each of them have had to come from the back. That's weird. Second of all, low-key, Snapdragon Stadium is a little bit haunted for Chase because the first time we went there, he crashed in the heat. Had to go to the LCQ. Remember, he slid out in the whoops. The whoops went into the last turn. Last year, I can't remember why. Actually, no, I do remember why. Last year, he crashed in the rhythm section after the first turn and had to come from last, finished 8th. And then this year, obviously, same sort of thing. Had to come from last, finished 6th. So Snapdragon Stadium has a weird little vibe for Chase, but he can be relieved that he is alive because, oh my, the incident or non-incident with Ferrandis on the first lap of the main event, I saw it live and genuinely, I will never forget it because I felt like I was watching
Mariah's Canard all over again.
I don't know. I felt like I was watching the most epic catastrophe in the world, and it will forever stay with me because I'll have nightmares for quite some time. Like that, even the fact that he was obviously aware of where he was looking up, but because he was looking up, he was kind of losing his not his balance, but you lose your sense of where you are, don't you?
Yeah.
So he was actually drifting into the path of Ferrandis, and that was also a slow motion catastrophe waiting to happen. I cannot believe that it ended up okay. And I haven't spoken to Chase, but I truly believe that part of the reason he crashed in one of the following turns is that he was probably still somewhat rattled from that near-death experience. Because I have to believe that heart rate's higher, you're panicking a little bit. That has to have an effect on you for a couple of corners. There's no way that happens and you're like, sweet, off we go.
It was literally the next corner, right? Because he basically landed to get a right-hander, go on, and then, through the rhythm lane, it was the next
semantics, you could say that the corner after the triple was the next corner. So it comes down to personal preference. But
wasn't for Dylan. Hey, the other thing that amazed me is not only the fact that Dylan managed to avoid him that much at the last possible second on takeoff and get that much lean angle in the air to get away from him. The fact that Dylan landed on the side of the triple, still made it up the side of the on-off on the next section, and somehow continued on like nothing happened.
I don't know what it was, but maybe it was I don't know what it was. But even in the heats, I felt like the first lap of each 450 race felt riskier than normal. Like in the heat races, I felt similar to the Chase incident where there were a few things where I was like, whereas I'm not normally like that.
I think the layout tends to it. I mean, the fact that right after the start, we had the triple quad rhythm, even the first lap, of course, unless you have a lot of leeway, you're not going to go 3-4. Just even guys figuring out if they want to go 2-3-3, 3-2, just guys getting checked up, hanging up because one guy moves a little in the case. There was enough difference in the rhythm option. And then that triple in the right-hander was a little scary because, race line is, regardless if you're inside or out, you kind of all drift to that inside to set up for that corner. So it's just a lot of guys trying to take up a small amount of real estate. Actually, just speaking about the track in general, 10 whoops, back from 9 to 10. Not exactly a big set layout. Everybody was doing kind of the same thing, other than the rhythms when guys would mess up. Still really good racing. I enjoyed the overall layout itself.
Yeah, I'm happy with the tracks through 2 rounds. Both sand sections have been really good. I've liked the sand. Thumbs up for that.
Supercross sand sections have been actually good.
I really liked the guys doubling out of the sand from the inside. Yeah. Even like watching that for the 100th time, every single time I was like, oh, like that. I like that. So the 9-10 whoop thing, we are now allowed to have 10 whoops. It doesn't sound like 11 is on the cards, but we are going to fluctuate from 9 to 10 depending on how much space there is in the stadium. But it's not like an automatic, there's room, let's add a 10th. If there's room to add a 10th, everyone kind of needs to sign off on it. I presume that the signing off process will involve like looking back on San Diego and going, was that okay? Which it was. I can't think of any Deegan in the heat, but I can't think of any significant issues.
They weren't big. Even a couple guys, someone like, hey, add whoops or smaller, it's fine. It was funny on track walk how many jokes I heard even from the biggest name guys. They walk up and they're like, oh, wow, 10. I'm seeing guys look at each other going, I only know how to hit 9. I've only ever practiced 9. Does anybody know how to hit a 10th whoop? Like, we're talking about like Roczen. Yeah. All guys are just clowning it. Like, woo, 10 whoops are back.
I mean, technically it was 11 if you count the starter, but we do not count the starter in the number of whoops. It's kind of the industry standard. I don't know who decided that, but that is the industry standard.
We can only all agree on what a quad is.
But back to Chase. Honestly, he came through the field better, quicker, and got further than I expected. I felt like Malcolm was maybe possible. I felt like Hunter was just a no-go zone. And if you actually look at it, both Chase and Hunter got so close to Kenny and Cooper. Mm-hmm. It was one of those races where now looking at the results, I'm like, if this championship comes down to a couple of points, if Chase had had another lap, another 2 laps, he could have added 5 points quite easily. But still, a ride that without doubt built on Anaheim 1. Confidence will be higher, I would imagine. It really cemented the fact that he is in a better situation. Not a great result, of course, but absolutely no doubt that Chase Sexton is still the best of the best and at his very, very highest level. Fair?
I agree. No, fair. It's, I say, like, comes to the pack, but just overall, again, just kind of solidifies. Again, whether we're talking about Jett, we're talking about Eli, Chase, like all the rides for different reasons solidify why this, they're the 3 main people in this conversation. Different degree of success for the night, but in their own breath, all of them a very successful and solid ride.
I didn't interview Chase after the race, which is very sad, but I was planning to have a good old laugh about how last year at this point, he absolutely hated everything. Wasn't a good situation. This year, he loves everything, but actually, this is now a worse start to the season than last year. And isn't that funny how that works? I think we can all laugh at that. No?
It's odd.
I think we can all take something from that in life. I think there's something to take from that. Like, hey, even when things are going bad, maybe it's good.
Yeah, the result on paper doesn't always matter. He had a better results on paper at this point last year, but definitely was not happy with anything.
Yeah, just really weird. I don't know what that really means, but it is weird. It also is another little fact that I feel like we overlooked is that Chase winning A1, he of course won Salt Lake City, so low-key 2 Supercross wins in a row. Like there was if you put those together, there was low-key something there, and then add in fastest qualifier in San Diego. Felt like the streak, when including Salt Lake City, slightly overlooked. Of course, Decal Works supporting Chase Sexton and us, so thank you to all of us. Decal Works, us, and Chase. Thanks to all of us for being involved in that. Well done, all of us. But no, Chase is great, and honestly, I don't know what would have happened if Chase had stayed upright, because that battle at the front was so good. Add Chase in there, and I feel like our brains would have exploded. How do you even put That was such a brilliant race. How do you even put another top guy in that group and make it better? Like, my brain cannot even fathom how that looks.
I don't know, kind of like, was it Oakland Cheers? I mean, we had a couple hints of that between Eli, Coop, Chase. It's just fun to get close to that, like just three towering titans in terms of pace. Like, you go back to the Ricky James chatter, of course. So hopefully, I just subscribe to hopefully we get more of that over these next couple rounds.
Cooper Webb was sick. He took to Instagram and admitted that. He led laps in the heat and the main, so that was good. A solid start to the year. He's just a couple of points out of the red plate. Is there a part of you that wants to be critical of Webb after San Diego? Or, all things considered, are you like, to salvage a podium on a night where clearly he wasn't feeling great? Good enough, off we go.
I would say good enough, off we go. Particularly, this time of year guys are sick. I don't know what it is. You personally had it. Talking to Kenny, anybody who's had whatever this flu bug is that's floating around, knock on wood, I haven't gotten it yet, which is rare because I'm always getting sick at the beginning of the season. It sounds like it's pretty bad. I mean, you talked about being bed rest for multiple days. Roczen told me he was destroyed for like 10 days preseason. It took Levi out of racing competition. The fact that, Cooper performed that well and Hunter as well will come up in that conversation. Because also, correct me if I'm wrong, I never actually got clarification. Was Aaron from that, or was Aaron food poisoning?
No, I think he was sick as well, like similar flu type.
But his, it ruined him and shut him down for the night. But these guys, we've had plenty of riders perform well when they're sick, but I'll give a little extra nod to those guys because whatever's going around right now is not fun. And to perform at the level that Webb did all night on that, again, it doesn't make me critical of anything. Just like, okay, if he can do that in this situation, how's he going to? And again, with the lack of, kind of missing some last minute preseason prep, give him a couple weeks, I would think we'll see some more improvements.
How about this, though? And this is purely conversation, not something I subscribe to. Last year, Webb was amazing at Anaheim too. I felt like that was kind of where Webb came out and showed his stuff. Do you feel like Webb needs to have a ride similar to that before we go east to just cement his position in this framework? Because with the way that this is shaping up, with Chase, Eli, and Jett really being arguably each of them better than ever, does that put Webb in a more precarious position where it isn't necessarily possible for him to just sit back and take advantage of opportunist moments, as has been his playbook through the years? Does he need to kind of throw his hat into the ring and kind of be like, right, I'm also part of this. Hello, boys.
Yeah, yes and no, because I think, maybe sometimes we overlean on the opportunistic
We do.
him. Because I think last year he proved that otherwise. Like, he was super solid. I mean, everybody around him had their ups and downs, but I don't think anything fell too far into his wheelhouse. He had to be there every weekend and perform. It's tough. I think putting too much weight, we need to. He needs to cement himself in the conversation and show these guys he's going to be there. And eventually, I'm not too sure if I'm too worried about the particular round, but I think, by Tampa, Detroit-esque, we need to see something. We can get a couple more rounds. Again, it also kind of depends on, again, we've had Chase, Eli, and Jett kind of each have I wouldn't call it a bad race at this point, but a little bump in the road. If they each have, if that keeps coming up, even if Coop's just slowly building these next couple, again, with what he's been facing, I could see him build for another couple rounds, and then he'll strike. The bright side with Coop is I feel like when he does strike, he does something that really makes you go, on a different level again than just like this raw blinding speed from Eli or somebody. But I feel like when Coop strikes, he does put himself back in the conversation or remind these guys like, oh man, he is really something to deal with. And I'm sure when he does have his ride, it won't be gifted to him. I'm sure he'll strike in a way that will kind of put him on the map again. I
mean, if you want to defend Webb, this is it. He led for the first half of the main event, and in no way, in my opinion, was it like he was holding Eli up. So presume that if he was healthy and all was well, he would have just continued to kind of like manage the situation out front. I think it was more a case of he held on for as long as he could, and then the second Eli and Jett got by him in quick succession, it kind of burst the balloon, and then the adrenaline wore off, and the sickness and everything started to catch up to him.
The photo I have of him on the podium waiting to be interviewed, he's like leaned up against the pole and he has literally the most checked out, lights off look I've almost ever seen out of a human being. Just done.
My main takeaway with Ken Roczen is I was very, very disappointed because one position different, Ken Roczen would be our championship leader right now, and that would have really underlined a brilliant start to the season because no one had that on their bingo card. So I really was excited about the prospect of Roczen rolling up to A2 with a red plate. Alas, it didn't happen, but another solid night for Kenny. He's only 2 points out. I think it's Eli, one up on Chase, one up on Kenny. Mm-hmm. But yeah, solid start to Kenny. It's a similar question to what I said about Eli and Webb and whatever. Do you have faith that Kenny continues this to Daytona? Let's say the halfway point. Come the halfway point, is Kenny still in this form?
Yes. I think the thing is his form, I feel like a little, even though he's got a better result on paper than Webb, I still feel like maybe a little more than Webb. He needs to have a solidifying ride, if that makes sense. It is interesting. I was thinking back to our preseason conversations. I feel like a lot of people, again, going off preseason hype, were labeling like Jason above almost Kenny in consideration standpoint. And now, he has well solidified himself ahead of Jason, which I think is interesting. I have faith that Kenny's going to hang in there. I'm just really... Kenny just such an outlier for me these days. I just don't know what to say. Like, when's he going to win? How's this going to carry? We always say, like, you can't count out Webb. I get that way more and more with Kenny. I don't want to put my own foot in my mouth basically at this point because I don't feel like I can in any shape or form accurately predict what's going to happen.
This struck me earlier. Of course, the playbook with Kenny is, he always comes out and he's amazing at the first couple of rounds. He's so good at the start of the season. Is it possible, and I've never heard this even speculated, is it possible that actually Kenny is much better on the West Coast tracks than he is East Coast? Now, again, conversation. I'm not subscribing to this. Of course, many East Coast wins. Nashville, Indy last year, he was amazing. But is that something to do with it? Because I've never heard that even brought up into a conversation. But the evidence is there.
I mean, kind of like these, I think of the early West rounds, I think of the sprint pace at the beginning, like Kenny definitely has a hang it out character that seems to work really well on these tracks when he really wants to sprint early on in the races. Can freely go where he wants, everything. I could subscribe to that. I'd be curious to look at overall analytics over his career, because he's also joked about being really strong at the beginning of the season and it not leading anywhere. So, I mean, yeah, I could subscribe to that.
Next time I talk to Kenny, I will ask him that, because I feel like his opinion would be quite, well, you could argue that his opinion would be quite important in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Certainly, I think that's worth throwing out there. Hunter was fifth, much better than Anaheim 1. Super sick, as we said. So all-round better performance, a good gutsy ride, and I think Hunter is now going to be more of a factor in this lead group, top six, let's say. Apart from maybe Anderson, the top six we had in San Diego, Tomac, Jett, Webb, Roczen, Hunter, Sexton, you could argue that will be the six for the next little while. Again, Anderson, I would expect to break into there often. But apart from that, I wouldn't be surprised if that is your six. Malcolm was seventh. How about this? So Malcolm had his best start in years. So therefore, is a seventh... Are we celebrating that? If I'd spoken to him after the race, I would have said, your first reasonably good start in a very long time. Did it surprise you? Did you have to learn what it's like to start near the front, etc., etc.? Didn't talk to him after the race. So don't have that information. But all we've been waiting for is Malcolm to get a good start. So should we have expected more to come as a result of that? Hard questions. Hard analysts.
Maybe Malcolm of 3 years ago. But I just look at it now and I look at who's ahead of him. I'm like, yeah, even if he outstarts him, how do you have the staying power to stay ahead of the 6 we mentioned that's ahead of him.
Fair, I guess. And also, he was battered and bruised at Anaheim 1, so I'm sure that he isn't quite 100% yet. He even made mention of that on social media, that after the rough start to the season, he will happily take his San Diego result and move on to Anaheim 2. Barsha was very quiet, but effective again. A very nice start to the season for Barsha, low-key. I think there's been some potential there. It's just been kind of lost in all of the hustle and bustle. But I think we do like what we see from Barsha. Ferrandis rebounded well after missing the main at A1. That's kind of Ferrandis' spot, I feel. He was better than that at the start of last year, but another year on, I feel like 7 to 9 is a nice spot for Ferrandis, and anything more than that is a massive win. Fair?
Fair.
Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page with that. Savatgy, talking about a rider's spot, 10th place, his first top 10 in almost 2 years. But let's not forget that when he last raced 450 Supercross, he started the season with 10, 10, 10, 9, 9, 8 results. So for him to slot back into 10th, we're right back where we need to be for Savatgy. 2 years missed, and we're right back. So maybe he now just goes on a little run of 10, 10, 10 again. Watch out for that. Justin Cooper, similar question to Malcolm. Think I'm underwhelmed. Think I would have liked to see something through the first 2 rounds. Yamaha rider, of course, so he's got that going for him. No issues there. If anything, it's a massive bonus. But I think I would have liked to have just seen a flash. I don't know what that flash would be necessarily, but I would have liked to see something.
We saw it earlier last year, just a start and basically show they can run that for at least 4.
He had to start at Anaheim 1.
I know.
And actually,
that's what I was saying. What do we want to see? We want to see what we saw last year, which is a start and then run there a little longer. Let me hit you with one. Like, there's 3 people I kind of have in this thought of conversation. We're talking about that top 6-ish kind of group being a little bit settled. I guess, Anderson should be up there as well. But take Barsha, Justin Cooper, and Jorge Prado. Of those 3, who is the first and most likely to kind of break into that top 6 conversation consistently?
Oh, Barsha, and that's not even a conversation.
Good.
I think Barsha, J. Prado is a very clear-cut ranking of those riders.
Yep.
I believe. Speaking of Prado, 12th place, and what really stood out to me is the fact that, well, quite clearly someone in either Prado's camp or Fox's camp have decided that pink is going to be Prado's identity. Fair? Fair.
Well, wasn't that with Scott Goggles and like his glasses and stuff? Pink's been kind of his color with that, with his coat, like his signature stuff has been kind of pink the last year or 2 with the GPs. But again, we were like limited to goggles and glasses. Like we didn't have full kits because we didn't have that kind of say,
I don't know. I don't know if I'll go that far. But point being, so far from what I've seen from Fox and Prado, we are just hitting it out of the park. Time and time again. And I'm going to do a Fox read in a minute, but I swear this little bit is in no way influenced by an advertiser. Fox and Prado are just killing it. It's absolutely superb. Just brilliant. Really putting the pressure on Alpine stars who have really dominated the good look game for quite some time.
The other thing I really like is one default when Jorge signed to Cowie is, people saw some of the first photos of him, and it was, some of the 1 or 2 of the kits you originally saw. I was like, oh, this kind of screams, where's the differentiation from him to Cianciarulo? Because you got to kind of, okay, factory Cowie 450 rider and head-to-toe Fox. We've seen that for a few years now. So to give it its own identity this early in the season and kind of keep stamping it home, I really like that effort from those guys because, again, just really putting their stamp on this Prado relationship.
With a rich heritage and deep racing DNA, Fox Racing has been at the forefront of motocross for 50 years. They empower the world's best athletes like Jorge Prado, Ken Roczen, Levi Kitchen, and Joe Shimoda to chase their dreams. With their gear, dreamers become champions. They honor the past while inventing tomorrow, pushing the limits of racewear and protection. Because at Fox, change is the only constant. Shop their new elevated future limited edition design collection by visiting foxracing.com. Thank you to Fox, Decal Works, Yamaha, and of course Yoshimura. We'll hear more from them in a little while. Prado was very transparent on press day about the fact that he's had his ass kicked by Anderson every single day, every single session in the off-season. Not even close, is what he said. So for him to be faster than Anderson in, I believe, Q1, I think that was a little victory, a little step forward. He had to go to the LCQ, not ideal. I was a little nervous because, you know, anytime a factory rider goes to the LCQ, you're like, well, this could go wrong. And Prado has much less experience than most factory riders. So I was like, oh, if this is going to go wrong, now's the time. But he handled that well. And I think this is ticking along just okay. This is fine. Just we're ticking along and we're moving.
Hey, can I point out that this very much matches our preseason predictions that we got told we were crazy for? That, again, it'll truck along. It's fine. This is long-term building. We're not winning Supercrosses this year. Podiums are going to be, like, we were both going to be shocked. We're just hoping to get to top fives. Like, me and you both said, it would be, you know, we may interview him at the first couple rounds. It'd be like a 10th, great job. An 8th, great job. A 12th, like, we're building. Almost like we know what we're talking about or something. Weird one. Did he ditch the one-footed starting stance? I didn't catch action online because somebody was in the way, but I saw him put 2 footstools down for him before his heat race start.
I honestly have not seen his starts up close at all from the weekend, but I will look into that. I will indeed.
And the last one, was that, I'm trying to think back to last year. Did he go? He never went to an LCQ in his couple races last year.
No.
Ooh, LCQ experience. We're
Yeah,
getting
this
the
is
full.
what I mean.
We're getting the full Supercross experience in year one.
I felt as though if this could go wrong, it would be in that LCQ, but he handled it like a champ. I have no idea what happened to Jason Anderson because he was around 7th. I mean, admittedly, it wasn't a great race. I have no idea how he ended up 13th. No idea.
Same. I remember Dylan getting him for like 9th. I remember watching him at Ferrandis dice pretty hard, and then he just disappeared after that. So I don't know if he went down somewhere or if he's under the majorly sick banner, but I felt like I say majorly sick. I saw him run around with his wife on a scooter a bunch. Well, no, wait. Am I thinking of somebody else? I don't know. I'm confused.
Okay, that's cool. Really great content. Thank you for coming out.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Lap 14, he was 7th. Lap 15, 8. Lap 16, 9. Lap 17, 9. Lap 19, 9. Lap 20, 11. And then lap 23, 13. So that's not one tip over. That is a steady decline, which would correlate to some sort of issue. But after such a strong start to the season, that's certainly Anderson's momentum destroyed quite bluntly. So it'll be interesting to see what Anderson we get at Anaheim 2. Couple of quick notes from 450s. Plessinger is okay. Terrible start to the season for him, but there was some concerns about his hand, his head after the main event crash, but he has confirmed that he will be fine for Anaheim 2. He's going to have a good week of riding, which means that it really isn't serious, and he really wants to put the record straight when gates drop at Angel Stadium for the final time in 2025. Vince Freeze, there's not much to say here other than Eli and Jett were understandably frustrated by the lapping situation in the main event, and to put it frankly, I have no idea what that was.
He makes me really believe in the fact that we should adopt a penalty system very similar to Formula One. Basically, minor or major, F1 hands out penalty points. You know, whether you screw up somebody in qualifying, you just break a rule, whatever, and they score, you know, different points depending how severe it is. So really minor stuff does eventually add up, where I think it's you hit 11 points and you actually get banned for a race, which has happened once or twice. Like, or it puts drivers in a situation when they get really close. They, like Magnussen spent literally an entire season at Haas, basically right on the teetering point, and didn't pull any more shit the rest of the season because he knew he'd get banned for a race. Let's adopt something like that so even the minors eventually add up. I think I'm guaranteed he would end up with one at the rate we're going.
I think my main takeaway from the Vince incident was it is remarkable the lack of self-awareness a human can have. Didn't realize it was possible. Like, that's it. That's all I've got to say. I don't understand how you can have so little self-awareness.
It's like the WSX last year when he like turned around Octo and just like I've said this before on this pod, and I just can't defend. Like, I like Vince as a person. I love talking to Vince. I don't understand what happens when the helmet goes on. I've never seen somebody just completely check out so much.
Final note on 450s. I spoke to Colt Nichols after the race, and this is going to be a slow roll. He is aiming to be back to his best by Salt Lake City. So this is not a let's look forward to Detroit, because give it a couple of weeks and I'll be there. This really is going to be a rebuilding process. Of course, he injured his shoulder at the Australian WSX round in late November. I believe it sounds like the confidence is just shot, so that also needs to be rebuilt. Obviously, bike lacking testing time, all of that also needs to improve. So all around, I don't believe we're going to see the Colt Nichols that we expect for some time. But watch it as a slow developing story for the rest of the season, because that's the plan. It's not a plan to rush it and get back to the top very, very quickly. On to 250s.
On to 250s.
So, I had completely given up on 250 West.
You wrote it off at the end of last
just done with 250 West. But I believe we have a series on our hands. I genuinely believe that Julian Beaumer can match Hayden Deegan on speed, intensity, mental games, across the board. If this was top trumps, Juju would match Deegan, in my mind, on each category. So I believe we have a race on our hands. And I think that Hayden's subdued nature after the main event, on the podium, etc., would indicate that he too believes that he has a race on his hands. So game on.
Let me hit you with one. If 2 weeks before A1, I would have told you that over the first 2 rounds that Jett Lawrence or Hayden Deegan wouldn't win a main, which of those two would you have said?
Oh, Hayden.
Okay, you would have gone with the Hayden.
Purely because of a situational 250s are easier than 450s.
Yeah. Well, easier. I was saying, which one would be less the way you're answering is you would have thought it was more likely that Jett wouldn't win across the opening 2 or Hayden win across.
No, more likely that Jett wouldn't, because
okay.
It's quite realistic that Tomac and Chase can win the first 2 rounds despite Jett being amazing. But for Deegan, in my wildest dreams, I would not have been able to dream up a scenario where he does not win one of the first 2 rounds.
No, I agree, especially for the talk of moving to West, because we're more prepped, this and that. And in one aspect, yes, I see him ride, and he seems at times like the most complete guy in the field, but it is kind of crazy come race time, just some of the little things that still need to be worked on that I just didn't expect to see out of him.
I think the most fascinating interview to get in Supercross at the moment would be Christian Craig. I would love to know his viewpoint of Hayden's season so far, what needs to be worked on, what improvements are visible to him. That is the one bit of input that I would love to get. So maybe for Anaheim too, that will be on the docket. But yeah, no. And to be honest, I kind of said this in the off-season. So I'm bringing it back. Hayden was amazing outdoors, but thus far, his Supercross seasons have not given the vibe of, again, I said this, there were people who said he was going to have a perfect season in like September. Now, as we edged closer to Supercross and saw that the West Coast was particularly weak, the perfect season talk started to become slightly more realistic. But to say that in like September was just wildly inaccurate, because we hadn't seen that from Deegan in Supercross. There's not been the wow factor that we've seen outdoors, and I think that's fair. That's a fair statement.
I will say in general, this West Coast series though has me just beyond excited with the fact that we have between Deegan, Davies, Beaumer, just a younger group where 250 class has been a little bit more dominated by like a Smith, a Hampshire. The age thing comes into play a little bit more. Ferrandis during his run, Craig, Nichols, Jacob, etc. I am just really curious to see how this plays out the next couple rounds. Like how much, I agree with you. I think right now Beaumer can go toe to toe with him. Does that change though? By the time we leave Glendale, could Hayden put down a dominant enough performance to make you change your mind at all? Or do you think no matter what, we exit this West Coast initial swing with a very like split percentage on title contenders?
Well, Hayden was fantastic in Salt Lake City for the shootout, or the showdown, as it is appropriately called. So there is a chance. I think if Hayden comes out and dominates Anaheim too, none of us are surprised, and we kind of reset to factory default of like, well, it's Hayden. Of course he's going to do that. So there's that. Also, what we maybe forget is that Beaumer really struggled in his rookie season because he wasn't very good in the wet conditions, the rutty conditions, any of that. So already I would be concerned about Juju when we go to the showdown in, I believe, Indy is one, for instance. That would be on my mind as a clear weakness in the Deegan versus Juju battle. However, what Juju has in his corner is he is not expected to win. If Juju wins this thing, that is just a bonus, and a terrific bonus. If Deegan loses this title, or even if Deegan wins this title by the narrowest of margins, that will be a black spot on his record. Because Deegan, according to everyone, including you and I, he should just run away with this title. Like, this shouldn't even be a conversation. The fact that this is a conversation after 2 rounds in itself is shocking and unbelievable. So the pressure is in Hayden's court, of course. That goes without saying. I think Juju will be very good at Anaheim too, and I think Juju will be very good at Glendale. It's what happens after that, which will be very interesting to me.
I agree.
Okay, good. So we will wait and see. Where do you factor Joe in this now? Is he just out of it?
I wouldn't say. I mean, we'll see how he can rebound. I was actually impressed. It's bad not knowing how bad his hand was till I saw the photos afterwards. I mean, we knew it was pretty bad because they were considering pulling out. The evening, I'm impressed he hung in there as well as he did through the whole night program after seeing his hand afterwards. The sucky part is we do have 2 more back-to-backs. I don't feel like there's a lot you can do for that style of injury. You can kind of get maybe the pinky that's messed up plated this week, I guess, or something. But they can make it more stable. His grip and pain is still going to suck next weekend. It just sucks. I mean, for Joe to finally come out swinging, I don't know how to weigh this. Is it a blessing in disguise that we're going to be on break here in 2 more weeks, or is it just going to screw him too much having to deal with this 2 weeks back to back with no ability to rest it? Can he stay in this enough to stay part of the conversation?
I think that even if Joe was healthy, you could argue that it would have been an uphill battle to contend with Hayden, less so Juju, but Hayden, for the championship. So now that he's trying to do it injured, I think that's just too... No matter what way you spin it, as far as timing, circumstance, all of that, I think that it's just too much to ask from Joe.
It just sucks, of course, because ifs and buts. But based on what we saw last weekend, it would have been nice to see him get that. You know, it's one thing a rider crashes on their own, something. It is just kind of that gut of like, man, would have loved to seen, could he make this happen? So that is a bit disappointing. This comes to a little bit different conversation. It's been brought up so much time in the last 2 years, and I want to know where you stand on it. Pit boards versus radio communication. Does this give you that little reminder of like, wow, we have such an oddball item in our sport that potentially just derailed somebody's, title run? Is this another little kick in the butt to where we really should reconsider communication in the sport?
Okay, 1, who knew that pit boards could do that? Because they're just flimsy.
Come on, I knew pit board.
No, but I mean MXGP, they have like these billboards. America's just these bit of plastics. Just boop, boop,
have you ever, dude? A bunch of them are carbon fiber. They're freaking stout.
But compared to MXGP, like MXGP is literally like, here's a slab of wood.
Yeah, but you're also, pit lane is how far away?
No, okay, so this is my second point. The pit boards are in the same place every single week. So does some blame go on Joe for like, it's the same situation every single week, so watch out?
I get that point, don't get me wrong, but I also left just a track layout like, okay, moving the mechanics back farther or something instead of them all. That is the main racing line in that section. Literally right against the tough block was the main racing section. Move the guys back or something.
Okay, point 3. In F1, they have pit boards despite having very sophisticated radio communication. Yeah. So even if we had radio communication, the stuff that's on the pit board is not what would be communicated, because what they're going to do, say, hello, Eli, That was a 54.955. That was 0.026. Like, Eli's going to be like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree.
So the replacing pit boards with radio is almost irrelevant. They're two completely different things. Fourth point, I don't have one, other than it is just a wrong place, wrong time, bad luck, sucky situation.
I did laugh at the bit of dark conspiracy that started going around the forum, not the forum, just like social media in general. People really leading on it was Duff, it was Star, it was a Yamaha pit board. I mean, it was a Yamaha pit board, but it was a Club MX Yamaha pit board. It ultimately, sadly, was Cody Schock's mechanic at Club MX that it was his pit board that clipped Joe's hand. Yeah, we went to we quickly went deep in the conspiracy theory there with some people.
Yeah, well, this is where we're at. But one thing that is not a conspiracy theory and is just utter fact is that whilst it's all against Joe at the moment, the fact that he can count on Yoshimura exhausts is a massive string to his bow, and it could just be the thing to help him overcome this mass of adversity. This could be it. So, if you also want to overcome the mass adversity in your life, head to yoshimura-rd.com. Yeah, because you won't be able to have an and in a URL. That's what threw me, because that's not possible.
Yoshimura-rd.com.
Yep, so head there, and maybe you can use Yoshimura exhaust to handle the adversity in your racing and power yourself to better results, like Jett Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence did this past weekend. Do that is my advice. Thank you to Yoshimura, Fox Racing, Decal Works, and Yamaha for all of their support of the Vital MX post-race show.
Jordan Smith, this is something me and you spoke about more with Faulkner at the beginning of the season, or preseason, is the difference in the environment and what you think of the results. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jordan went 2-1 or 1-2 across the opening 2 rounds last year. I think it was 2-1.
3-1, I think.
He's gone 3-2 across these opening 2 rounds. It's funny how a little bit different it looks with the Triumph, in the sense of just such a good story for those guys. Again, I talked about Faulkner. If Faulkner wins a race or 2, doesn't win the title, PC, it's the worst thing ever. It happens at Triumph. It's just all good. It's, again, just what Jordan's put across these opening rounds, just kind of, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of question marks with Triumph anymore. It's very much they've arrived.
Does Jordan look more stable this year? Just more polished, less erratic? Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting to talk to him. Not that, he said part of it, Star, he figured out something at the end of the year that would have helped, but I don't honestly take it as him trying to overpump his situation at Triumph or trying to bag on his old team or anything, but he has a lot of positives to say about a situation. Not now, he'll immediately tell you, like, oh, we still need to work on this or that. But he does state a lot of things about this program, this bike, the entire situation that's just working for him. And I agree with you. Like Jordan, prior, I think that's I talked to him just so consistent. And he was like, yeah, but I got similar results as beginning last year, but I didn't want to sit there and give him this long explanation. I'm like, no, it's like everything about you, the way you look. Like the last big string of his career, Jordan, frantic, fast, sketchy. Jordan now, calm, cool, collected, just looks in control, just looks so solid.
Are we not giving Jordan enough credit in this title fight? I feel like, and as crazy as this is to say, I feel like if he wins it, it's through consistency and picking up the pieces dropped by Hayden and Juju somewhat.
Which, if so, I think, Jordan of the past probably would just send himself at this point. Correct me if I'm wrong. I based on the Jordan we've seen in the past, I don't know if he can harness that last extra that extra percent or 2 without it being a toss away. So yeah, I think, a little bit older, a little bit wiser. I think the way he does win this title is not, he's going to take the wins when they're there. I don't know if it's trying to one up these guys every night. I think maybe taking a step back, but being just a little bit more grounded and settled is the way he wins this title. Because if he tries to go toe to toe with Hayden and Juju on their good nights, speed-wise, do you see it working? You see it just kind of the same old, age-old thing that happens to Jordan.
Yeah, I think this is nice. And to your point about the environment, I think Jordan is just thriving in a situation where he is the number one guy. His opinion really means something to the team. He can say, hey, I've got a crazy idea, and I believe the team are like, okay, let's try it. Whereas Star was maybe more, well, we've always done it this way. Well, we need to focus on Hayden. He was just one of many. Whereas you could argue that at Star, he was just a number. Whereas at Triumph, I do believe he is a very integral part of the makeup there. And I think he likes that, thrives on that.
Yeah. Well, you think at Star, we talked about when he got hired, people were even questioning, like, okay, the year he got hired, they were in the middle of a rebuilding process. Jordan, we talked about at the time, it's like, okay, Jordan has a chance at a title, but I don't know if it ever felt like Star hired him in the sense of like, oh, we're hiring Jordan because he can win a title. He's got a shot. We need a guy that's got a shot because we're in the middle of a rebuilding process with a lot of kids. So there's immediately right there's a lot of focus on getting that next generation ready. But it's like, here's Jordan. In the meanwhile, if he wins some, that's good for us. Where again, Triumph has hired him like, you can win us a title. We are hiring you for that reason. And we're putting the resources and the effort into you because that is why we've basically paid you to be here. Why we've brought you a contract, why we want you.
Yeah, and that feels nice. Cole Davies kind of delivered on a promise that we saw at Anaheim 1. He will certainly be on the podium soon, and I believe the safe money would be on him winning a main this year. I don't think that's crazy. Of course, a lot of it depends on whether Hayden finds his true form, because if Hayden does do that, then it will lock out the possibility for a lot of guys to get wins. But so far, Davies has been an undoubted success, and this has turned out very nice. I don't think there's much more to say about that, unless you have something.
No, I was just going to say to your comment, I would think, okay, a Beaumare, a Smith, a Deegan win. We've already got it with Beaumare. We've already got it with Joe. But Deegan and Smiths are both coming this season, unless something weird, like those are guarantees and locks. Would you say that between the Davies, DeFrancesco, I guess maybe some more, right now, Davies is the next most likely to win. He's the fifth guy on the list to win one of these West Coast races this year, right above anybody else in this conversation.
Wait, above who? Above Jordan?
Above a DeFrancesco, above a Mosman. No.
Okay.
Beaumare, Smith, Deegan, and we already have a Shimoda. Those four are a lock. Like that's happening, barring something weird happening. Davies is the fifth, right? Above a Ryder D, above a Marchbanks, above a Mosman, any of them.
Yeah, agreed. Including Moserman in that list is wild, but agreed.
Well, again, the speed, okay, I got another one for you real quick. This is farther down the list, but let's throw it at you. Who, I'm not saying you're in chat, Marchbanks or Moserman, which one would shock you more to win a main event this year?
Oh, Moserman, of course. But my next point was going to be, this is not going well for Marchbanks. I mean, terrible start, but he got to 8th around the halfway mark and then just progress stalled. So
progress stalled behind Joe, who's basically riding with one hand.
Yeah, this isn't good. And once again, the black cloud continues to follow Pro Circuit. But come East, expectations will be very, very high indeed. And it should go better than this because Ty Masterpool, who took the spot of Levi Kitchen in 250SX West, is now seemingly out for some time with, I think the word is broken fingers? Finger ring? Yeah, I think it's fingers as well. But
so we're out. Joe's racing with fingers, but Ty's out?
Well, I saw him after the race with, I wouldn't say a cast, but a minor cast.
Splints on the fingers or whatever.
So I would say, and let's be honest, in Ty's situation, is that not enough for you to go, and we're waiting for outdoors? And that's all we need to see. See you at Fox Raceway, right?
Drew Adams, you're getting the call a week later, but time to go racing, buddy.
Do you think that happens? I mean, it does, right?
That was the old school, but what I said in our explanation video this week, the reason you can pick is they needed somebody to actually get hurt for him to go racing because they need to use that rider's materials, that rider's mechanic, everything. So if Ty is out, Drew is going to get the nod. I would think. Yeah, they're not. There's a reason why they moved Ty over, other than just gonna go racing, Garrett. Let's get it on. It is just still interesting between the two of them. Okay, Ty's walking out of hurt, but he's still, expectation is good for outdoors. Has another year on his contract. Just to touch on the Marchbanks thing again, I brought up Tim at the A1 press conference. Hey, everybody else on this team has long-term commitments. You came back here. That's awesome. 1-year deal. Because him continuing this position is going to be based off his Supercross results. We know he's a bigger guy. It's just not going to work at all rounds on outdoors. So just based off 2 rounds, I would say his chances at PC or staying put aren't looking the most fantastic. And if it's not there, I don't, okay, where are we going from here?
Okay, here's a bold pick. If Drew Adams does race this weekend, he beats Marchbanks.
No.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if that's really, I don't know if you can say that, but okay.
One reason I say that, I'll be curious if we get to interview him at press conference. I don't know how much time he's had on the new bike on Supercross because, again, lack of materials, a few things. I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong, Garrett's results aren't great. Cole's had, on paper, it's like, well, Davies is doing this good. Drew should do that good. I don't know if Drew's had has really had the quality prep time that Davies has had the last 3 months.
This is why I ask if you think, okay, logically, now the Master Pool is hurt, it would make sense for Drew to come out at Anaheim too. Logically, on paper, I'm still not convinced for all of these reasons. Yes, it makes perfect sense, but I would not be surprised if he is not, in fact, at A2.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with you that. The default is, Drew will be on the bike next week. However, again, lack prep, a couple other things. Also, the way it works, sponsor. Yeah, they need somebody, but you're also 2 rounds before a big break. Do you give it a week, and if it's going really well, you go for Glendale, or do you just say flat out, even when they picked up Mumford as a fill-in based on condition, a few things, he could have raced the following week, and they said, F it, we're waiting, till Seattle if we're going to go race, we're going to do it right. Yeah, they still have Garrett on track, so they aren't. If Garrett was hurt too, Drew's racing next week, and regardless, Drew's racing if Garrett's hurt. But with Garrett on track, yeah, there's a chance we don't see Drew at A2. There's even a chance we wouldn't see him at Glendale, even if they say, okay, we are bringing him in. Maybe they wait till, Arlington. They could wait till Arlington.
Yeah. Moserman looks a million times better than he did at A1. At A1, he looked like a fish out of water. It was terrible. At San Diego, you could already see the Michael Moserman coming out. There was almost a bit of excitement there. So if that continues to trend in that direction, perhaps this could be a career resurrection after all. Which, to be truthful, I think that just about everyone has written Michael Moserman off. But maybe it was too soon. Watch this space. What else 250-wise? You can do the update on AEO. There you go.
Massively bad. Talon Hawkins, broken femur, surgery today. Don't know when he'll be back. It didn't look like the cleanest break on the face earth. Avery got released from the hospital 2 hours afterwards. Concussion, extremely bruised, blew an artery out in his neck or something weird. I haven't seen him yet. Probably see him tomorrow, but he's generally okay. I think he sits out this next week, and he's probably back for Glendale. But yeah, Hawkins is definitely out for Supercross. Do we have any other injuries on 250s? I thought we had one more. Maybe not.
Yeah, so did I. But no, maybe not. Shimoda, Master Pool.
Yeah, I was going to say one interesting one, 250s is kind of the quietness. Okay, Cody floating in 6, kind of a gap back to Yoder in 10. So it's, it's this factory group with Cody kind of being the only one in the middle of the conversation. And then a big jump back to the, next privateer best guy, which again has kind of been your Burdone, Yoder, Thompson over the opening couple rounds. One other note, Jett Reynolds survived a Supercross race. Legitimately survived one, because last week was kind of rough. Only about 4 or 5 years later than it was supposed to happen, but congrats to Reynolds for getting that part done and getting a 13th.
And congrats to Club MX because they had a nice little bit of activation with the first form new sponsor they've got, and I thought that was quite impressive. We are trying to entice new companies, and I felt like that was a good job. So props to them. And also on a semi-related note, Team Tedder had a golf simulator in their pit, and award of $100,000, I think, if you got a hole in one. So I don't know what that's about. I don't really understand.
Yeah, that's the last round. The funny one is because, of course, no offense, the Feld crew did not expect Hill to be top 10 in points for round 2, so they needed something for his opening ceremonies video. So on Friday, I saw them in the golf simulator with him in gear filming. I was like, okay, this is going to be his opening ceremonies video. They need something. But it was funny because I remember Hill telling me back in November, yeah, we got a golf simulator on the semi. I'm like, But he didn't explain it. I'm like, wait, for people to play or just for you to hang out in the back with Dakota and hit? I'm not really. With Tedder, it could go either way. It could be for the team just to screw around with, or it could have been for activation. Either way.
And also with Hill, this could also be a major distraction.
Yeah. Either way, 14 a little rougher from the second round, but still solid for him. 250s continues to confuse me. Nico, Koch is German, but I kept hearing him literally say cock on the broadcast.
Nothing against cock.
Okay, Nico Cock. Cock and Long qualified right next to each other. Long Cock.
Okay. And they're 12 years old.
Always. Never ceases to fail. Yeah, it's this. Again, the 250 batch is a little weird. Just kind of some names I didn't expect. Nico in the main. Varize is hanging in there with like barely a week on the bike. But hey ho, on to the next one. Again, 250 West has gotten more interesting, at least. Okay,
let's do this quickly before we go. Pull up the 450 points and give me your biggest surprise and biggest disappointment through 2 rounds.
Okay, just brought it up.
Hard to pick a surprise, I feel.
Yeah. Jett in 5th is a little bit like, no, it wouldn't have shocked me.
But would that not be a disappointment?
Yeah, I guess kind of like disappointment. I would have thought 3rd or 4th, so I mean, not far off. We're talking about a position. Actually, Plessinger 15th. I think that's my disappointment considering, the highs of last year. To see Plessinger sitting 15th in points is probably my disappointment.
Not so much result orientated, but for disappointment, I'd go Jacob just because with the start at Anaheim 1, and I really felt like he was going to come out this year and take a step, and I haven't seen that yet, and I'd like to see that. Couple of good surprises. I like how the beta guys look. Oldenburg looks like he's got some potential, so I think that Oldenburg could be someone to watch. Coming up here, Roczen, of course, no one was talking about him in the off-season, so this has been great. Barsha, after a difficult year last year, that's been a steady, nice surprise. Justin Hill, of course. Yeah, a few guys. Right, are we done?
We're done.
Okay, thank you to Decal Works, Yamaha, Yoshimura, and Fox Racing for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Thank you to you people for watching and listening. We will be back in 7 days' time after Anaheim 2, round 3 of Monster Energy AMA Supercross. So we will see you then.